Oklahoma Supreme Court says that Black Tulsa Race Massacre survivors get $0 despite being victims of terrorism and mass violence that was sanctioned by the state government of Oklahoma, where they had a whole bunch of law enforcement literally cooperating to steal a whole bunch of resources from Black Tulsans. Meanwhile, in 1996, the families of an Oklahoma City bombing got $50 million to assist them as victims of terrorism and mass violence, and the state didn't have nothing to do with what they had going on right there. Or because they felt like because this dude did this in retaliation for what the state did, and you know what I'm saying, Waco, we're gonna do this right here, and the state took responsibility for that, but they can't take responsibility for what the state did to these Oklahomans in Tulsa. It's crazy. This is America. This is the conservative contradictions that they love to play right here too. Look at these two women faces and everything they ain't been through. This Juneteenth, remember how it illustrates how we free-ish. You know what I'm saying? How we was able to get out of a limbo of being enslaved, but we still ain't necessarily reached that pinnacle of freedom. The institution of enslavement was sanctioned by the government. What happened to these two women right here was sanctioned by the government.
Another day, America reminds you who they are and will let you down. The Oklahoma Supreme Court ruled 8-1 that the grievances filed by the survivors of the Tulsa Race Massacre to get just compensation and reparations does not fit within the public nuisance law of Oklahoma, and that there was no unjust enrichment. I talked about this earlier, how an Oklahoma lower court said that just because you're part of an historical event doesn't mean you are due reparations. This fight for reparations for the survivors of the Tulsa Race Massacre has been going on for years. There used to be 3 survivors. Now there's only 2 because one of them, Van Ellis, died at the age of 102 last year. And the remaining 2 are 109 and 110. And one of the survivors, Viola Fletcher, said that she has not gotten over it because it ruined her life.
Family, on June 12th of 2024, the Oklahoma Supreme Court ruled against Viola Fletcher, who's 110 years, and Lacey Benningfield, who's 109 years, the last 2 non-survivors of the 1921 Tulsa Race Massacre, seeking reparations for the devastation of the Greenwood Black Wall Street community. Family, it is very, very funny that only 2 sole survivors of the Tulsa Massacre were denied reparations in the Supreme Court in Oklahoma in June 12th of 2024. Family, that saddened me so much. That made me ask a question. If they cannot be able to pay for reparations for 2 people, would they pay for the descendants of the enslaved Africans? You know, would they be able to pay everyone? Family, many a times, the white supremacists who are always against reparation, many a times they say that they cannot pay for reparations for people who they did not harm. They cannot pay reparations for people who are already dead. But family, for this specific massacre, the people who were victims, only 2 of them are remaining. And they have proven they were part of what happened on that fateful day in 1921. And they were denied an opportunity to get reparations close to 105 million per person in dollars has defeated the American government, which perpetuated the very same fight they got in the very year. Family, I want you to see as Americans show their frustration in this video. So fam, I want you to watch the video. Once the videos are done, we will get back and do a critical analysis about the same. Let's watch this video together, family.
Survivors of the Tulsa Massacre of 1921, which happened 100 years ago this month, testifying before Congress today, calling on the U.S. government to officially acknowledge one of the worst mass killings in American history, which likely left hundreds dead and destroyed an economically vibrant black community known as Black Wall Street. White woman, setting off a violent rampage by a white mob through the city's Black Greenwood district. Over the course of 18 hours, the neighborhood was decimated. More than 1,000 homes and businesses destroyed. Reporters never forget the violence of the mob as she escaped her home with her family.
I still see black men being shot, black bodies lying in the street. I still smell smoke and see fire. I still see black businesses being burned. I still hear airplanes flying overhead. I hear the screams. I have lived through the massacre every day. Our country may forget this history, but I cannot.
What does justice look like to you?
Well, everything is beautiful and rebuilt and restored, and we just think it's just time now that we have justice on all of that, to where we can live all our life, that type of life over again as a grown-up.
For 109-year-old Viola Fletcher and the two other known survivors of the 1921 Tulsa Race Massacre, the wait for that justice will drag on. That's because an Oklahoma judge threw out their years-long legal efforts seeking reparations and rebuilding to address the historical damage done 102 years ago by the race massacre that destroyed Black Wall Street. Judge Caroline Wall sided with the state and city of Tulsa, who argued, in part, that being connected to a historical event doesn't give a person unlimited rights to seek compensation. And joining me now is Demario Solomon Simmons, civil rights attorney and founder of Justice for Greenwood. Demario, it is great to see you. I have to say, the argument that people have normally made against reparations is, well, the victims of enslavement or some other wrong are long dead. We can't compensate people who are alive because the victims are dead. But now you have a case where the victims are alive. There are 3 people who are alive, and they're still saying, well, you still can't have reparations. Make that make sense, because it seems like a heads you lose, tails I win.
Yeah, I mean, it's always a moving of the goalpost when it comes to Black people and our racial justice claims. And you're right, Joy. 109 years old. Mother Fletcher was 7 years old at the time. Mother Randall, 108, she was 6 years old at the time. They saw, they felt, they heard, and they witnessed and experienced the race massacre. They're still here. And that's the thing that this case is so important nationally, because we have the photos, we have the video, we have the hundreds of insurance claims. We have living people who are saying this happened to me, and no one is disputing that this happened to them. Yet the city of Tulsa, the county, the chamber, and the state are saying, we don't care that this happened to you. We're not going to do anything for you, your families, or the community.
Let me play what you said last time that you were here on the show about the defendants in this case.
We know that the defendants, their strategy was to have these beautiful individuals, they want them to die, point blank. They was hoping that during this delay that they wouldn't be here any further longer. But they both told me they're going to be here for the long haul.
And I mean, that's what it sounds like. It sounds like they want to go back to the original argument, saying there are no living victims.
Absolutely, and that's why Justice for Greenwood, our organization that's fighting on behalf of these survivors and descendants, that's why we've had a holistic plan, because we know that the city and the state, they just want these people to be dead so then they can continue to utilize the massacre to raise more money for themselves. Joy, as you know, the city used the massacre and everything to raise over $30 million for their own benefit to create a tourism attraction, yet they don't want to give one penny, one dime to any of the survivors or the descendants. And that's why this decision to dismiss us is so hurtful, it is so unbelievable, because as you know, Joy, last year the same judge said we can move forward. But it's not over. We're going to appeal this case to the Oklahoma Supreme Court. We know that's a conservative venue, but the law is so clear here. If they would just do the rule of law, and again, we know how that is when it comes to Black people, but if they just follow the law, we will actually be successful to get back into court. In the meanwhile, we're calling on the federal government, President Joe Biden, our dear sister Kristen Clark at the Department of Justice, to come in and open a criminal investigation that's never happened in Greenwood. They can do this today. Right now, today, they have the authority to do that, and we're asking them to do it.
Because we know U.S. military planes were used as well. Jonathan, who produced this segment, he went looking for the ruling by Judge Caroline Wall, and at first thought he didn't find it because he just found this 3-sentence, upon hearing the arguments of counsel, this case is dismissed with prejudice. That's the ruling. She didn't even explain her ruling. She just wrote 3 quick lines and get out of my courtroom. To me, that seems like an insult, particularly, as you said, since the city of Tulsa has used these people and their tragedy to earn money off of them.
It is an insult. And Joy, when I found out about this by a reporter calling me late Friday evening, and it was a gut punch. And then I felt so bad for myself, but then feeling bad to have to call my clients and tell them what happened. And when they asked me, well, what's the reasoning? And I have to tell them, I don't know. The judge didn't even give us the decency to explain it to us in a written order, and outside of just putting this in on Friday night. So it's something that is just should not have happened. The standard that we were having, the bar was so low on a motion to dismiss in this type of situation. And for us not to have any type of a reasoning, it leaves you, the only thing you can think of is this is another chapter in a 102-year book where they continue to say no. They continue to find ways to say no, regardless of when you bring the claim, how you bring the claim, or who brings the claim. But that's why we're going to still continue to fight. We're going to appeal this case. We're going to look at other avenues to get these people justice and the entire Black community from Greenwood, because this is a case that impacts all of Black America's racial justice claims. As you stated, Joy, we have living survivors, we have video, we have pictures, we have millions of dollars in insurance claims, and they're still going to say no. This cannot stand in America. And I ask everyone that believes in truth, justice, and reparations for these survivors and Black folks to join with us at Justice for Greenwood, justiceforgreenwood.org. Get with us, stand with us, and let these three survivors know that they have a nation of people that's not just praying for them, but is actively in the fight for justice for them.
Absolutely. And, please pass along to Uncle Red and to Mother Fletcher and to the other wonderful survivor. We will stay on this case, Demario Solomon Simmons. We're going to invite you back whenever there are any elements or any developments in your lawsuit, your ongoing action to try to get justice for these people. $30 million, they pimped their tragedy for money. And I think that Tulsa needs to step up and do the right thing, and we're going to stay with it until they do. Thank you.
I don't ever want to hear the argument that Black people don't deserve reparations because we today weren't alive during slavery. One, because reparations are not just about slavery, and if you knew anything about reparations, you would know that. Two, because these two survivors of the Tulsa massacre are still alive and were denied their reparations by the state of Oklahoma. Miss Leslie Benningfield Randall, Miss Viola Fletcher, and Mr. Hughes Van Ellis began this suit in 2020 with hopes of seeing justice in their lifetime. Hughes Van Ellis died last year at the age of 102. About 300 Black people were murdered in Tulsa, Oklahoma that day by a white mob, many of them police. Their homes and businesses were robbed and burned to the ground. Those Black people who did survive, who were able to get away, were made refugees in their own country and thrown in concentration camps policed by the National Guard. The terrorists who did this were not adjudicated against. The Black victims, the survivors, their descendants were not given $1 of restitution or reparations or a bit of justice. The argument against reparations, that no one who was alive at the time should get them, supports an idea that if we were alive at the time, we should get them. And yet when we were alive in 1865, in 1965, in 2024, that remains untrue.
All right, so we have some breaking news. $105 million reparations package proposed for the survivors, yes, survivors and descendants of the Tulsa Race Massacre is more than just money. It's very much so long overdue. The acknowledgement of one of the worst acts of racial violence in the United States of America right here on this soil. Now, in 1921, a prosperous Black community known as Black Wall Street was burnt to the ground. Hundreds were killed, thousands were left homeless, and for decades, their pain was met with nothing but silence. Now, this proposal matters for a lot of reasons. One, it says, yes, we see you, we believe in you, and we're willing to take responsibility. Atonement isn't just about saying sorry, it's about making things right through investment, through repair, and more importantly, truth-telling. While no dollar amount can actually restore what was lost, this is definitely a step towards the right direction in justice and a model for how America itself can begin to heal from its legacy of racial violence. So I do want to acknowledge a couple of platforms that I follow that has made sure to keep the main thing the main thing. Number one is Justice for Greenwood Foundation. And founder of Justice for Greenwood Foundation, attorney Demario Solomon Simmons. So shout out to the mayor and everybody else in the city that's out there fighting for justice. Peace.
Oklahoma Supreme Court says that Black Tulsa Race Massacre survivors get $0 despite being victims of terrorism and mass violence that was sanctioned by the state government of Oklahoma, where they had a whole bunch of law enforcement literally cooperating to steal a whole bunch of resources from Black Tulsans. Meanwhile, in 1996, the families of an Oklahoma City bombing got $50 million to assist them as victims of terrorism and mass violence, and the state didn't have nothing to do with what they had going on right there. Or because they felt like because this dude did this in retaliation for what the state did, and you know what I'm saying, Waco, we're gonna do this right here, and the state took responsibility for that, but they can't take responsibility for what the state did to these Oklahomans in Tulsa. It's crazy. This is America. This is the conservative contradictions that they love to play right here too. Look at these two women faces and everything they ain't been through. This Juneteenth, remember how it illustrates how we free-ish. You know what I'm saying? How we was able to get out of a limbo of being enslaved, but we still ain't necessarily reached that pinnacle of freedom. The institution of enslavement was sanctioned by the government. What happened to these two women right here was sanctioned by the government. And in 2024, the government still feels if what happened to these two women ain't got nothing to do with the government. As kids, they watched their thriving neighborhood with a whole angry mob aided with local authorities burn this thriving community to the ground. And then when they was being raised as adults in their childhood, they watched the same state that terrorized them politically, socially, economically go into the history books and try to make it where it never happened.
Oh, okay. Gotta call that damn school. That's what she calling me about. I already know.
The state of Oklahoma is cooperating with what's going on in that strip over yonder way across the water. Why they saying this? It's baffling.
Here we go again. Oh my goodness. So not too long ago, we had the Tulsa mayor advocating. Now I want everyone to understand that the vast majority of the American people snapped out, right? They just tuned out because all they heard was reparations, okay? And what many of these individuals who constantly profess their love for the country are very ignorant of the country. So they associate reparations with slavery. That's it. And then that goes into their whole NPC talking points where you were never a slave, I was never a slave owner, why y'all deserve reparations? We saw this not too long ago when it came to the head of education, where she was asked, hey, are you familiar with the Tulsa Race Massacre? And she herself, McMahon, was like, I'll have to look into it. I want you to understand, this is something I've said before, not making it racial, just making an observation, how they view American history is separate from Black history, okay? That's what I hope you understand. They don't include Black history with American history. That is, they don't know anything about Black history, okay? The extent that many of these ignorants, okay, know about Black history is slavery. Abraham Lincoln freed the slaves. We had a civil war to free the slaves, and that's it. That's the extent of their history, of their Black history. Everything else was America is great, it's the land of the free, home of the brave, we're the greatest country ever. That is essentially, and I'm not even being hyperbolic, the understanding of a large swath of this country. Okay, and we can see this when it came to the election, the last election. That is their mind, okay? It's a very much a Neanderthal caveman mind. We're like, duh, America good, everybody else bad, okay? Black people bad, white people good. That's how they think. And I say that because if you can just simply go over, glance over the comments of the video, an anti-Black country. That's where its roots are, and that's where we are presently. So in addition to that, this reparations is not even cash payment, okay? This has nothing to do with money. What this has to do with is housing and scholarships. We're looking to give grants for housing, right, to help people get housing and to help people get educations. That's what this is about. And guess who are the loudest dissenting voices? That is correct. Those on the right. Those on the right who believe this is a handout, who believe, oh, this is reparations, who believe this is about slavery, even though this has nothing to do with that. And we saw not too long ago that it's one of the main arguments they want to say is that, hey, you were never a slave. Now, this has to do with the descendants of this Tulsa Race Massacre, which it absolutely had an impact, just as reparations has to do with the descendants of chattel slavery here in this country, which clearly to this day has an impact, okay?
Another day, America reminds you who they are and will let you down. The Oklahoma Supreme Court ruled 8-1 that the grievances filed by the survivors of the Tulsa Race Massacre to get just compensation and reparations does not fit within the public nuisance law of Oklahoma, and that there was no unjust enrichment. I talked about this earlier, how an Oklahoma lower court said that just because you're part of an historical event doesn't mean you are due reparations. This fight for reparations for the survivors of the Tulsa Race Massacre has been going on for years. There used to be 3 survivors. Now there's only 2 because one of them, Van Ellis, died at the age of 102 last year. And the remaining 2 are 109 and 110. And one of the survivors, Viola Fletcher, said that she has not gotten over it because it ruined her life, a chance to get an education and a better job being a nurse. These people's lives were ruined, destroyed, and the state of Oklahoma doesn't even have the bare decency to give them what is owed. They don't have the decency to make things right. Let this just be a reminder, black folks, America will always let you down.
Family, before I go far on this video, I just want to salute Viola Fletcher, who's now 111 years, I presume, and Lacey Benningfield, who's now 110 years. You know, these 2 people are very, very strong human beings. I really applaud them, even for them trying to follow up with a case, you know, demanding reparation from the American government, you know, after the Black Wall Street got unprecedented visitors and they were attacked and more than 300 people lost their lives on that day, on that fateful day. That is very, very sad. They've really fought so hard to get what they truly deserved, only a token to tell them that we are sorry. The American government has refused to give them. Family, that saddens me so much, having in mind that these people have lived with trauma all their lives since 1921. I presume they were little kids until today as victims of a massacre. Family, it saddens me so much when they have been the government of the United States of America, through the Oklahoma Supreme Court, refusing to pay them their reparations. Family, one question I asked it when I started this video and I'll ask again. If they cannot be able to compensate 2 people, to tell 2 people we are sorry, can they be able to pay for reparations because of the slavery that is still continuing to affect black communities in America? Can they be able to pay all of those people if they cannot be able to process payments for only 2 people, man? Family, I find it so sad. I find it very, very bad because, that's the least you can do for somebody who's gone through generations of trauma over what they saw as kids. So far, on June 12th, the Oklahoma Supreme Court dismissed the lawsuit brought by Viola Fletcher and Benningfield Randall, the last 2 survivors of the 1921 race massacre, seeking reparations for the devastation of the Greenwood, the Black Wall Street, sorry. The court held that the survivors' claims, while legitimate, did not fall within the scope of the state's public nuisance statute, which is limited to addressing ongoing physical harms, not historical injustices. You know, the statute they are talking about sorts ongoing physical harms, not about historical ones. The historical injustices, you can go look for somewhere else. But for the Supreme Court itself, they are saying they only sought, issues of ongoing physical harms. And family, that does not make sense to me. That does not make any sense. How do you mean that you do not sort anything historical? Where should they go? Where should they get the very same compensation? Family, that is not fair. A partial dissent from Justice James Edmondson was noted, but the majority ruled that such systemic generational inequalities are issues for policymakers, not the courts to resolve. The survivors team had requested a rehearing, which the court denied later that year. Family, imagine the times that we are living in. They actually voted. From 9 people, 8 were against the reparations. And family, yo, that does not make sense. There are only 2 of them. You know, you could even try reduce the price then say they cannot be able to get that, then say that now that it's not up to the court to decide. Family, where should they go for them to get the answers to why they are not being why they are not getting the reparations for a massacre that affected them directly? Oklahoma court ruling closed the courtroom door for Viola Fletcher and Lacey Benningfield Randall, 2 of the last known survivors, and they said that is the end of it. Family, having this in mind and what the massacre could have cost them over the years, they've lived life full of trauma. If they have children, their children have been raised by parents who are traumatized. This has affected their generation rather very, very badly. And it's proper that these people start working. You know, it's proper that the government of the United States of America sorts these people, because that is very, very unfair. Very, very unfair. Many a times people talk about not being able to compensate people who are already dead. But for this situation, these are people who are alive. And when we go back to the issue of slavery, Black Americans still deserve reparations because they were directly affected. The descendants of the enslaved Africans were affected, man. How were they affected? Right now, they're still living through a lot of bias. It's so difficult to be a Black person in America. They're still going through a lot of disadvantages when it comes to policing. We are seeing police officers murder young men and women, Black men and women, you know, without any fault. We are seeing many of the decisions in policing affecting our people. Family, we are seeing racial injustices still continuing in America. We are seeing racism, we are seeing discrimination and any other form of bias and prejudices against the Black community in America. This is thanks to racism. Sorry, this is thanks to slavery, you know, and you cannot say that now these people, the descendants, do not deserve to be paid because they were not the actual slaves. They are still living. They're still living to be affected with what was started through slavery. Family, make it make sense to me why the 2 victims of the massacre in 1921 cannot be paid. Make it make sense to me. Family, let me know in the comment section down below what you think about the video, and let me know if you think they deserve reparations or not. Family, I'd also request that you all do consider liking the video so that it can be recommended to other YouTube users. The goal of the channel has always been to speak about Black history, Black stories, and ensure that we talk about Black empowerment. And guys, we talk about Black stories the Black way, because if we give the supremacists an opportunity to tell our story, we all know what happens. Our story is rewritten and many a times whitewashed. Fam, we are on the road to 50,000 subscribers. Kindly do consider subscribing to the channel, man. Share the video widely with your friends and family, and I'd really appreciate. Thank you guys, and see you all in our next episode. Goodbye for now.